Ranking Member Graves, Chairman DeFazio, Ranking Member Graves, thanks for having me here today. For those members that are new to the subcommittee, GAMA represents those that make the actual aircraft itself, the engines, the avionics, large maintenance, repair, overhaul facilities, and training providers, and we are a global association. If you look at what we have done over the last 10 years, working very hand-in-hand with our colleagues, Mr. Perrone's organization, along with this committee, we have implemented certification reform that without would have absolutely devastated our industry during this shutdown. So we are very thankful for the cooperative way we've worked with this. And I want to just echo what my colleagues here have said at the table. The legislation that has been put forward with the Aviation Funding and Stability Act is something that's united the industry that I haven't seen in the time that I've been at the association. And the only reason that we only had 40 logos on the letter that you saw yesterday was just we didn't have time. We wanted to get it out before this hearing because there would have been many more. So you have universal support for this legislation going forward. Now, because we had the certification reform, we were able to still function during the shutdown, but that does not mean that it did not have significant impact to the manufacturers and maintenance providers. And I want to give you just two quick examples, and I'll use one from Louisiana. So you have a rotorcraft company that provides emergency medical support throughout the nation. In fact, here in Washington, D.C., those that we hear in the life flight helicopters were provided by this company. They do supplemental type certificate modifications to these aircraft so that they can go ahead and do it. They were stalled. They weren't able to get these aircraft to market. When you have to make bets as a manufacturer or a supplier that you're going to be able to deliver product to your customer on time. If you don't, you default on those contracts. So that has significant impact, and it ripples through the system. Another example in Washington State. In the central part or western part of the state, we have a manufacturer making small aircraft. In fact, it's still fabric covered. And the impact on them was cascading all during the shutdown. So they couldn't move airplanes that were already produced off the ramp to foreign buyers that bought the aircraft because validations all have to go through the FAA, and they were all stalled. When they go and they make an aircraft and they drill a hole, if the hole is misdrilled and it's a little bit larger, then you have a deviation from the type design. You have to get permission from the FAA to put a bigger rivet in it. That's how highly regulated our industry is, like no other. And so you have ripple effects all throughout the system. So during the shutdown, we had very open lines of communication to the FAA leadership. And I just want to echo what my colleagues have said. Acting Administrator Elwell, Ali Barami, who runs the safety division, Terry Bristol on the air traffic control side, and up to Secretary Chow. They did everything within the limits of the law to be able to listen to us and try to mitigate as best they could. But all of these effects were compounding. So when you go into a shutdown and start planning for it, and that happened this week, all of a sudden the activity starts to slow down because they've got to get ready for the shutdown. And then once the shutdown is over with, our calculation, which is bared out with the previous shutdowns that Ranking Member Graves mentioned, it's usually about 3 to 4 weeks for every 1 week of shutdown, because you're not just having to clean out your inbox. You got to keep pace of this increasing amount of activity that's coming at Mr. Perrone's people. So the safety part of the FAA, you know, we as manufacturers, a lot of us fly in the system, and we touch Mr. Rinaldi's people all the time, and the selfless performance they did during the shutdown is so much appreciated. But Mr. Perrone's folks are kind of, for us as manufacturers and maintenance providers and training providers, they're the unsung heroes, because they sit there and they allow us with the safety oversight that permeates every single thing that we do. And without them to be able to approve each and every part of the process, the system starts to break down and the recovery becomes very long. So now moving forward, it's very important for us as manufacturers to implement what you all did last year in the 2018 FAA Reauthorization Act. There continues to be significant reforms out there in certification, and we had a lot of lessons learned during this shutdown. We learned that at delegated authorities or ODAs that are managed in one part of the country aren't managed the same in others. So there's a lot of things that we will be able to capture. But I would ask this committee as we move forward, these reforms are important, and we need to keep them online because we have tremendous new equipment coming into the system. A lot of attention is paid to commercial drones, but we got on-demand air mobility coming very quickly. And commercial space, we're going to see launches this year on significant commercial space operations. So we need to make sure that the pressure remains and the oversight maintains on the FAA to be able to go and drive last year's reforms across the goal line. Thank you.